Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends. I hope this finds you so well. Today is a very special day for me because it is my middle son's 14th birthday. I've just been feeling some sweet, tender feelings towards him, as well as feeling a little sadness because I don't get to hug him today. Our family has had COVID and he was at his dad's when we got it. So he chose to stay away, which is probably smart. He doesn't want to miss any school. But I haven't seen him in like 10 days. My husband and my littlest got COVID first and I held out, and now I finally have it, which you can maybe hear a little bit in my voice. I'm kind of on the tail end of it. Still a little funny in my head. So hopefully I won't mix my words up too much. That's usually what happens with me when my head's a little foggy. Anyway, feeling a lot of love for my kid today. I do get to see him later. We're having a socially distanced birthday party for him, just with the family. So he's gonna sit at a different table outside and have dinner and cake and all the good stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. But it's definitely a special day for me, with lots of tender feelings. And maybe that's actually a little bit what we're going to talk about is tender, loving feelings. That is going to be the topic, and I'm going to introduce a concept to help you move towards having more of those in your marriage. So let's dive in. As I talked about on the episode 3 Phases to Mature Lasting Love, which was episode 76 and an absolute must of all of these podcast episodes. Highly recommend you go listen to that if you haven't. But as I talked about in that, it's really normal in relationships for that sort of first bliss of love to feel like it wears off and to kind of end up in a space that feels like we're disenchanted with our partner and in our relationship, right? And so when we get to that place, or preferably before, right, the work that we have to do is to cultivate feeling love on purpose, right? Like, it's normal for us as human beings to get to a point where it's not as easy to feel all the good, yummy feelings we want to feel in our marriage, and therefore we need to cultivate them on purpose, right? Now, and I think sometimes in our world, there's like some mythologies that lead us to feeling like we're entitled to always have that, initial sparkle, like in those early days. I call it the land of infatuation. Right? Like we feel like sometimes I think we might feel like we are entitled to stay in that space. But as we looked at in that episode 76, it's not how it works in real human love, in real human relationships. We find ourselves often, as we move through the phases of love, in that disenchanted place. And so in order to move through that and into what I call real enchantment or re-enchantment, like it's being really enchanted with this real human being, and to a place of really lasting, yummy love and connection with our honey, it takes intentionality. It takes deliberateness, right? And to get to those places where we are feeling and staying in, a lot of the time, stay in this place of really feeling love and connection and support and all the yummy things that we want to feel in our marriages, we first of all need to understand where we are now, and then how we can steward our emotions, guide our emotions into those places, into the realms we want. So how do we do that? That's the bazillion-dollar question, right? But here's when the love spectrum scale comes into play, this tool. It's one of the tools that you can use to help guide you along. And I think of this as more an entry tool to help orient you as to where you are and where you want to go and help ultimately guide you. I, of course, use other tools and teach other skills to my clients about cultivating the emotions they want to feel in their marriage. And so know that this is just one of a collection of tools that work together to get you back into that place, or get you not back, but forward into the place of, again, what I call real enchantment in your marriage, and really that big love without conditions between you and your partner that's so wildly deep and sustaining. So I teach clients what I call intentional feeling creation, right? Exactly how to do that and in depth, right? To intentionally create the feelings they want and ultimately the results they want in their marriage, right? Until they feel they can be truly the agent of their own emotions and experiences, right? And they can walk themselves into those most yummy feeling spaces and results that they want in their marriage. And another way of putting this is they walk themselves up the scale of the love spectrum. When they do, of course, again, I want to reiterate this, they create amazing results in their marriages. They create better and better results because our feelings lead to our actions and how we show up and interact, which of course is going to lead to the results we get in our marriage. And of course, as my clients do this, they also create the results of so much more well-being in all ways inside of themselves, right? Because as studies show, your own emotional and physical health is increased in so many ways when feeling the feelings I'm presenting here to you on the love spectrum scale, right? These are, in other words, these feelings are feelings of robust health and well-being for you, and of course for your marriage as well. So what is the love spectrum scale? First of all, I want to take a step back and say, I like to think about our emotions as if they are on like a spectrum. And I oftentimes will use this sort of different types of scales to kind of measure or get a sense of and identify the emotions we're having and the emotions that we'd prefer to have, right? And really to get to know ourselves ultimately and get to know what we want. So there's scales, like I think of the emotion scale as, I think I presented this in the episode about calming emotional reactivity for HSPs. That's episode 36, where we looked at like if 0 was neutral on the emotion scale and -10 was the worst feeling ever. We look at all the negative emotions down to -10, right? So maybe like you'd rate yourself at a -5 if you're feeling quite upset, but not rage, right? If you're feeling anger, but not rage. Or, yeah, makes sense? So, and we can also look at a full spectrum of positive emotions, like from 0 on the scale to +10. And this can include any and all emotions that we would categorize as quote unquote positive or neutral, right? But the love spectrum scale is the emotions that are on that sort of spectrum of what love is, right? And are like made up of the emotions that are most fundamental and important in being able to feel such love and goodness with you and your honey, right? So again, I want you to know there's other emotions that might be useful. We're not going to include all emotions on this scale today. This is just the love spectrum scale, okay? So the way that you can imagine this in your head, and you could, even if you're really visual and kind of hands-on person, you could take a pen and a piece of paper right now and write it down. So you would put a little marker sort of towards the left hand of your paper, and then just draw a straight line out towards the right hand of your paper and put another marker. Now, pure deep love, that's just what I like to call it, would be at that right hand side, okay, of the paper. So you write that down. And then at the very left-hand side of the paper, now we might call this the bottom of the scale and the top of the scale. Like the pure deep love would be at the top of the scale, and zero, or like neutral, I just called it zero because that's what I'm used to thinking of it as. Neutral would be on the left hand or the bottom. I don't like to think of it as a ladder because I don't actually think one emotion is superior to another. They're all very useful when it comes to love. And even though at the same time, like we do kind of want to aim for like the most love possible, but they're all really useful. So I don't want you to totally think of it as like superiority and inferiority when it comes to these emotions. Okay. You might hear me saying the top of the scale and the bottom of the scale, but I don't mean that as one is like not as good as the other. Okay. Back to the diagram. So the way I like to envision this love spectrum scale is on that bottom or at the left hand is the feeling of neutral. And then we're going to walk our way to all the way up to that pure deep love that's at the top, right? So we might write acceptance as the next step, safety right in there also around acceptance. And then we might write worthiness, significance. Then we might move towards the next thing we write. Again, we're moving towards the right hand of the scale. Tenderness, compassion. And then moving even further towards the right or up the scale is respect. And then admiration. And then connection. And we might also somewhere in there put what I call warmth of heart. And eventually we'll find ourselves at passion, joy, love. And then we finally got to that pure deep love. This is like kind of like, if this is an art, not a science. So I'm just presenting a possible order that you could put on your own love spectrum scale. And I highly advise you do make your own, right? Because mine's not a hard and fast rule as to what the scale really is, right? It's not a hard and fast rule because we're all individuals. So to you, you might put those in different orders for you, right? Like if one feels yummier to you or feels like it's a place you want to be in, like say admiration might to you feel better and like you want to, or more useful, or like you want to be there more. It might actually feel better than passion for you. I don't know. Right? So that you get to kind of check in with these emotions and see if there are any more like along these lines, the ones that I presented, and put those in your own personal love spectrum scale. A few more that you might actually want to put on there are generous. I did a whole episode about generosity, generous love it's called, and that talks about why that's such a useful emotion for the love and marriage that we're wanting. Another one is grateful. Another is affectionate. Another is appreciative. Another is curious. These are all three very similar. Curious, fascinated, and intrigued. Those are amazing in a marriage. And they're part of this love spectrum that's going to lead us to creating such a great result between us and our partner when we're in any of these emotions, right? So you could add those to your own scale. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate, I don't want to imply that it's better to feel, say, passion than acceptance. It doesn't actually make you have necessarily a better marriage to have lots of passion, especially if there's no acceptance. Right? But acceptance, even though I put it sort of lower down, quote unquote, or like to the left on the spectrum scale, acceptance is actually more useful a lot of the time than passion in a marriage, right? Because like if you don't have acceptance of your partner, you're going to run into so many problems, so many ways. Yeah. But of course, having passion is a great addition too, right? And that leads to fun results, of course. right? And certainly both of them you're going to want to feel most likely over, say, like resentment, which is so common to feel in a marriage. Again, I'm going to reiterate I'd say the most key emotions we want in our marriage, or emotion we want in our marriage, is that pure, deep love. Like the unconditional love, the love without restriction that I talked about a few episodes ago, or number 79. If you didn't hear that one, you gotta go listen to that one. So good. And episode 15 also. Like those episodes really make it so clear why pure, deep love, unrestricted love is so powerful for you and your marriage, right? And here I'll just say it really is the glue, the nourishment, and the joy, like actually like the lifeblood for us in our marriages, right? It's like the ultimate fuel for the best marriage possible. To be able to get into and stay in that love, that pure, unrestricted love. Yeah. But the other emotions on this love spectrum scale are really amazing too for generating great results. And by landing in them, by taking ourselves into them purposefully, we can more easily get to and more sustainably stay in the ultimate one, right? Love, 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 love. Make sense? So the other ones actually help us get to and stay in this pure, deep, unconditional love space. And each of these feelings on the scale will have you showing up differently when you're feeling them. Right? Like you'll say different words when you're feeling acceptance than when you're feeling compassion, than when you're feeling connection or admiration, right? The tone of your voice will be different when you're feeling those different emotions, right? And how you string your words together will be different from each of those emotions, right? You'll be doing different things when you're in those different emotional states, right? Because again, our feelings are the fuel that creates our action, right? So when we're using different fuel, we're going to have different actions. So therefore, each different feeling on this love spectrum scale, and actually in general, that you experience, each different feeling you experience will lead you to creating different results in your life, in your marriage, right? So any of the emotions on the love spectrum scale will lead to great results in your marriage. And different ones will be appropriate, or you'll want to feel them at different times depending on the situation, right? Let's imagine, say your husband lost his job. He just got fired. It might be kind of a weird way to show up if you were feeling a lot of passion, like sexy passion towards him, right? Like that might not necessarily serve him or you at the moment if he's feeling kind of dejected and rejected and mad because he lost his job, right? So maybe in a case like that, compassion would be a more appropriate emotion, or maybe even respect or admiration, right? Because with compassion, for example, you could just show up and love on him and support him, right? And just kind of be present with him. Or with respect and admiration, you might be able to tell him hey, honey, I know you're having a hard time, but I want you to know how much I believe in you and how great I think you are and how much you've got going for you, right? You'd be able to offer a lot of great encouragement and belief in himself, which might be a beautiful thing for someone who's just gotten fired, right? So you can see, hopefully from that example, how different emotions will fuel you to show up in a different way, which will therefore create different results. All right, I want to offer just a little sort of side note or tangent here, is that there are a lot of other emotions that we could put, again, like I said earlier, on emotions scales, right? From super negative to neutral to super positive, right? And many of these emotions will be useful for us to experience in order to create what we want in our lives and in our marriages, right? Some examples of ones that I didn't include on the love spectrum scale are carefree, courageous, willing, vulnerable, right? I think I talked about this in a recent episode about how to create emotional intimacy, where we talked about like sometimes creating what we want requires us to feel and have uncomfortable emotions, right? Discomfort. Like willingness doesn't always feel good. Vulnerability doesn't feel good, but it can lead to some incredible results in our marriages, right? So I just wanted to offer that side note, and then to let you know that this love spectrum scale is really just to help bring you home to the core emotions that really create such a vibrant love. And again, I'm not including all emotion that's possible to put on this love spectrum scale. I want you to add your own, add any that I've missed that feel like appropriate here for you. And another really important note, which is so easy to miss this, is that I really want you to know that we don't just want to cultivate these emotions on this love spectrum scale when it comes to our husband. Like we don't want to just cultivate them kind of like towards him, but actually towards our own precious selves. In fact, it's going to be so much easier to access these feelings for your partner when you can always know how to access them towards you first and foremost. And when you can do that, you're going to eliminate a whole heck of a lot of problems. I never say the word heck. I don't know why that just came out of my mouth. You're going to be able to eliminate a lot of problems in your marriage. So as a sort of more tangible example of this, of like using the love spectrum scale, and often a place my clients and I start is moving from judgment to compassion. Because so often my clients come to me, and as women, as wives, as highly sensitive wives especially, it's really easy to find ourselves in judgment of our partner. And that's always going to be kind of a divisive place, an emotion to be in. And it's always going to lead to like disconnection and distance and separation when we're in judgment. And so when we can see where we are, we can then decide to move towards something that works better, right? We can move up that scale or to the right on that love spectrum scale. And one of the more easy places to access on that love spectrum scale is that sort of more to the left is compassion. Like one example that I can think of that's more concrete is when like one of my clients was frustrated that her partner was coming home grumpy from work and was kind of mad at him and judging him about it, right? Like kind of like he shouldn't be acting like that with me, right? And that would create a feeling of kind of hardness and separation between them or in her towards him. And as we worked together pretty quickly, we were able to turn it right into compassion by her seeing this is a guy who's suffering at work. He's in pain, right? And to go from that judgment to that place of compassion is so much like going into compassion feels so much softer. It is an experience of an open-heartedness that can actually easily compel you into feeling your heart full for this human being that is your partner, right? I see that so often, is that, compassion is like just this little doorway that we walk into that quickly opens up to like lots of love for our honey, right? And it's an easy step. Like once we make that pivot from judgment to compassion, it's an easy step into that like deep love. Now, along these same lines, sometimes we need to have compassion for ourselves first before we can open the doorway to compassion for someone else. It often needs to come first, especially as highly sensitive people, because I think one thing that can happen for us is, say, we're judging our partner. Deep down inside of us, we know we don't want to be judging our partner, that it's not who we want to be. And so we end up judging ourselves for judging him, right? So if we can have self-compassion, if we can have compassion for our humanness, we can free ourselves up and really land back in our hearts, right? Which is what compassion leads us to. And then we can genuinely access compassion for him, right? Which again can lead us straight back to love. So the love spectrum scale is really mostly just an awareness tool, right? It shows you where you are. It shows you where you want to be. Actually, it might not show you where you are. That's actually like the other end of the scale, like the neutral to -10 negative emotions, quote unquote, right? So oftentimes we're there, but maybe it does show you where you are. Like maybe you're in acceptance, right? But oftentimes we find ourselves, if we're not having the marriage we want, exactly, if it's not going just the way we want, we oftentimes might find that we're in this sort of negative emotion scale. So the love spectrum scale and this negative emotion scale, like these show us where we are. And then the love spectrum scale shows us what's possible, where we can head if we decide we want to, right? And like awareness of just that is so much, right? Awareness is always the beginning of change. So just having this awareness for yourself is so powerful. When we walk around with no awareness, there's no possibility for change. So that is why I love this tool so much. So how do you use the tool? Again, you use it to notice where you are in any given moment and notice where you want to be. Right? And you might just notice, I feel off. I don't feel great in my marriage at this moment. And then you can call up in your mind's eye or look at that piece of paper where you made your lovely personal love spectrum scale and be like, where do I want to be? What do I want to feel? Where do I want to be on this scale? Right? And then once you see that where you want to go, you can move towards it. You can choose it. Now, again, this is one of the things that I teach my clients in depth how to do. And I know that me saying to you, you can just choose it, might feel like, well, okay, thanks, Hannah, but how? And I'm going to give you a little bit more on that. And obviously, if you really want to understand all of this and be able to be a master at all of this in like great depth, that's when you want to come coach with me. But first, I'm going to give you a few notes about it. You don't want to use the spectrum, the love spectrum scale, as like, I feel really mad and I want to jump all the way to feeling pure deep love, right? Like we don't say the alphabet as like, we don't jump from A to Z in the alphabet, right? And we don't necessarily want to do that with the love spectrum scale either. Sometimes you can really move from one end to the other really quickly, like I was talking about with compassion and pure deep love, right? Sometimes it's just one little shift in your thinking, like a tiny little shift. And I see this all the time with my clients, right? They feel like resentment acutely. And then within a couple minutes with me, with one little shift in their perception, they feel so much warmth of heart and tenderness towards their husband again. Sometimes they might call that compassion, but sometimes it really is a sense of that love without conditions, that unrestricted deep love, right? So it can be really quick, but sometimes you'll need to stair step, right? You'll need to move up that scale to the right of that scale, like as if you're taking one step after another, right? Especially if you've spent a lot of time on that like negative emotion scale in your marriage. Right? It's going to maybe take you a little longer to walk back towards pure deep love. And that's okay, right? It can take longer than a minute. It can take weeks or months, depending how deep and old your patterns and beliefs are, right? Again, how long you've been locked into the state, the less than loving states in your marriage, right? And this, of course, is one of the reasons I work with clients over a period of time, because that's what will make it sustainable. That's what will make you get not just to acceptance, but in that, the rest of that love spectrum scale, to the end of it, that deep, pure love. Yeah. So even if it takes some time, you can absolutely walk your way over to love or any of the feelings on this scale. Like that's in your hands. That's up to you. That's within your power, 100%. Right? And it first starts by seeing where you are and then asking where you want to be, right? That's step 1 and step 2. And the third step for you in, without giving you all the tools, although there's a lot that I've offered you in this podcast and various episodes to help with this. But to give you like a simple little question here to ask yourself as step 3, ask yourself what you need to believe, think, or shift, or open to, or do to move yourself up the scale, right? To move yourself one step towards where you want to be. So let's say you're feeling, maybe you're just feeling neutral. That's a place we feel a lot, like, not bad, not good, just neutral towards our honey. We don't even feel like he's our honey at the moment, just like, not a lot of feeling, right? And maybe you notice you're feeling that, and then you ask yourself, well, what do I want to feel? And you're like, I want to feel connection. So in order to get there, if you wrote down the love spectrum scale that I presented you, you might notice you first are going to take a step towards maybe feeling more respect for him. And then you'd ask yourself, well, what do I need to think, open up to? What do I need to believe? What do I need to do or shift in myself to move into respect first, right? And maybe the answer comes. I mean, you got to trust your own brain and mind, body, heart system to answer that question. Like as you ask that question, really open to hear the answer and receive the answer. But perhaps it will be something like, remember something that he did that you thought was pretty awesome. Or how is he someone I can respect? And then once you found some feelings of respect welling up for him, you can keep taking steps up that love spectrum scale and going through the same little process here every step of the way. Now, so important. So I want you to hear this. Sometimes we can't move up this scale until we see why we are where we are. So if some of you are like listening to me and you're like, I can't imagine, moving up that love spectrum scale. Like it's hard for me even to feel neutral in my marriage, right? Or if you imagine moving into like one of these emotions on the love spectrum scale and you just feel like there's a real block in you to be able to do that, like, of course, this just means you got to take a look at what that block is, right? Often our hearts, which open or close depending where our minds are focusing or what beliefs we hold, many of which are from childhood or like conditioning from our culture, or many of which we've had forever, right? Often our hearts can't open when we have certain sets of those beliefs and conditioning and when our minds are going in certain directions, right? So we need to see what is in us, right? All of that stuff that's keeping us cut off from any of these emotions on the love spectrum scale, right? In other words, if it's hard to open your heart, it's because there's a collection of beliefs and perceptions and pre-programming inside of you that's keeping you from being able to have that open heart and move up the love spectrum scale. And yes, my love, it is always in you, even if you can't see it or you don't want to admit it. But that actually is incredible news because if it's in you, you can shift it. Just takes a little focus. And what I find is almost magic is once we really see these blockages in us, once we really see them and realize they come from us and like really see them and see it, these blockages, these beliefs, these perceptions, these blockages, they often just fall away of their own accord once we really see them and leave us with access to our hearts. Right? Leave us with access to all of these emotions on the love spectrum scale, right? Because that actually is what you are. These emotions, right, are at your core. They're just covered over by a lot of debris. right? Mental, psychic debris. And that's stuff you can clean up and clear out so that you have access to that wide, deep, love-filled heart of yours. So get playing with this love spectrum scale. And if you find you really run into trouble and it's really hard for you to move yourself along the love spectrum scale, that may just be an indication that it's appropriate and would be really powerful for you to get some professional support with that. This is my expertise. I love helping people be able to really access the love they want and make their marriage what they want it to be. And that can take some self-reflection and some sort of excavating the barriers to love in you. And that's what I'm here to help you with in my coaching programs. Now, if you are not already on my email list, you want to be. I get regular emails from people saying things like, wow, this email couldn't have come at a more perfect moment. It was just what I needed to hear today. Reading those words really shifted things for me. Just the shift I needed today. So if you too want to have access to those regular little shifts that just come right into your inbox, and I know you do, don't hesitate to jump on my email list. I will put the link to just directly jump on that email list in the show notes. Or you can head right over to www.lifeisworthloving.com/email.